country. What about me? Every time.
That's one question. Know me, okay? I'm the CEO of Brycoal. I'm the technical lead of the company. I'm, I have an environmental science background. I have a little bit of engineering background. I started actually with engineering, robotics engineering, before I switched majors to environmental science. Um, I would like to call myself an innovator and an entrepreneur. I love solving problems. I love finding ways that things can be redesigned and reshaped in ways that has not been done before. So I like looking at things through different lens. I like looking at things and approaching things in ways that traditionally people may have not approached. I like trying to find loopholes, things that people may have overlooked, areas that may have that there may be opportunities that people have kind of not really paid a lot of attention to. So that's usually what I love doing. My outlook on life, I believe, has impacted my whole identity, allowing me to be an entrepreneur, allowing me to do what I do day to day, which is run my company, which is a renewable energy company. So I'm someone who is very, very passionate about the climate, the environment, ensuring that we consume sustainably and we ensure that our consumption does not lead to adverse negative effects on the environment, on the climate, on the livelihood of people, and we live in a healthy, sustainable way. So I try to, I believe I preach the gospel of sustainability and climate consciousness. That's usually what I do, and that translates into all businesses I venture into.
Every day, every night.
So Brycoal started in 2018 in response to a competition which is regarded as the Nobel Prize for students called the Hall Prize. The Hall Prize has been running for the past 12 years, and each year, in partnership with Bill Clinton, they launch a challenge. For $1 million, they may say it's a challenge to create 10,000 jobs in 10 years with $1 million, or how can we solve the energy poverty problem. So we started trying to create 10,000 jobs for northern Nigerian youth in 10 years with $1 million. And the idea that we came up with was we found that there was a lot of agricultural waste on streets and roads all over Nigeria. And we found that the only way we can get access to all this agricultural waste, for example, what we started was sugarcane waste littered all over streets, was we felt, what about we get the almajiris and the scavengers who walk every street. So we tried to create a whole biomass collection sector that has never existed. So the same way people collect plastic and metal from the road, we wanted to start picking sugarcane waste, sugarcane peelings, things like the agricultural biomass, right, from the street, which we then pay them per kilo for. So it was an attempt to be able to create employment. We're trying to process biomass waste, agricultural waste, into sustainable products like building bricks, roof tiles, things like that. So slowly we found out that we could use this same biomass to be able to produce a superior cooking or fuel. Essentially, we could convert the cane waste, rice husk, things like that into a superior cooking charcoal that is more healthier, it's more efficient, and it's more affordable for the general public. So it was also that product allows us to be able to then push out natural charcoal out of the market, which is leading to deforestation and land loss and many other biodiversity loss that we're facing, right? So doing that, we ended up building a renewable energy company that provides a cooking fuel alternative, and as a result of that, recycles waste, creates employment, and solves energy poverty and dirty fuels in the environment like kerosene and wood charcoal, etc. So it's a multifaceted enterprise to solve a lot of problems simultaneously, right? And that's what we've been doing for a while. Right now, our business has really changed significantly, which we're even creating a carbon credit marketplace and essentially a way that people who are making positive changes to the environment, businesses and individuals alike, they are consuming things that have less carbon emissions. We're able to create a way that they're able to get paid by corporations and other institutions for their carbon savings, right? So that's what we're working on, right? And building the first fully Nigerian carbon credit marketplace, right?
People talk about injustice.
The market has been responding quite good. The issues for us, in fact, as a matter of fact, we found that the market has been responding quite tremendously good, right? We've had a lot of orders from a lot of individuals who are looking for our products, and not just in Nigeria, but also abroad, right? There are a lot of people who want to do barbecue and grill and ensure that their fireplace is not is sustainable and they're not consuming things that have been outlawed. For example, now charcoal has been banned in Nigeria, right? So a white man in the US has read that news that charcoal has been banned in Nigeria. And when he uses charcoal, he knows that this has been most likely illegally exported from this country. So he's going to choose companies like Brycoal that provide him with a sustainable alternative that gives him even more value for his money, plus it's sustainable. It's made using other raw materials, doesn't lead to trees being cut down or any laws being broken in the process. So we're good for the environment and we're good for your pocket as well. So the market has been quite receptive. As a matter of fact, what has slowed us down was research, testing, government regulations, instability in our forex, importation, COVID, capital expenditure that is quite high for our own area of business. So we have not, we didn't really wanted to go the traditional route of going to banks for loans. Because you're a startup, you barely even have revenue during the early days. No one is going to give you a loan, right? So our products have been quite receptive. A lot of it we export to the international community. Nigerians, on the other hand, the market is quite tricky, and we do not have the capacity yet to really provide to Nigerians the way we want to. But nevertheless, we're still selling in Nigeria, and we have gotten a lot of positive remarks so far.
Injustice that breeds suffering in the world.
So the company is currently based in Kano State. That's where our central processing facility is. But we are currently in 5 states in Nigeria: Kogi, Kano, Oyo State, Ondo, and Lagos. And what we have in those states is we have micro off-grid solar-powered processing plants that process palm kernel shells or coconut shells into carbon, which we then transport to our central facility to produce a higher efficient cooking fuel and cooking energy, which can be used by industries, etc. So this small micro processing plant, this modular processing plant that we like to call modular carbonization plants, what they do is they convert agricultural byproducts, like I told you, palm kernel shells, etc., into carbon, right? And we then use this carbon to produce a superior quality cooking fuel, which can be used for in bakeries, restaurants, grills, in households, for cooking, etc. Right? So we have these efficient systems that we made, which is currently in the process of patent, right? And they utilize solar energy to process agricultural waste into carbon. Plus, apart from that, this space that we're operating is where majority of our raw materials is. We work with over 2,000 farmers in Nigeria, which are part of our robust supply chain. We're hoping to increase that number to about 10,000 by the second quarter of 2024. Sorry, fourth quarter of 2024.
People complaining about love.
We have quite a couple of competitors. Well, essentially, it's not really what we do, but it's how we do it, really. The market we have decided to go after is more climate conscious and more environmentally conscious. Our market that we're looking after is international market. A lot of people who are looking for sustainable options, but they're not able to have sustainable charcoal that they can use, right? So those are the people we're going after: millennials, Gen Z, Generation X, individuals, demographics like that. They're looking at choosing to even pay more for sustainable products that have a positive impact on the environment. and ensure that they do not have a negative carbon footprint, right? A high net carbon footprint. So those are the markets we're going after. Plus, our product is quite certified by the Nigerian Standard Organization and many other reputable bodies, both locally and internationally. So we have that recognition. The type of we're very impact focused, and we have developed a community of people who understand what the company, the values the company stand for, and the vision of what we're trying to achieve. And that community really pushes the product and pushes the company to stand out from emerging competition. So currently, the company is has about 11 staff working full time, some of them part time. It has a 200 square meter processing plant, semi-automatic processing plant, situated in Kano State. It's currently valued at shy of $3 million, and that's really where we are. Currently, we are projecting annual revenues of roughly about 700 to 800,000 dollars, and that's how much capacity and we're currently operating at. No job, no food, no life. I'll say the business. If there are any challenges, of course, no business do not have challenges. I'll say it's the tough environment, the climate in Nigeria. Business The business climate in Nigeria is tough quite recently. Inflation is making a lot of things not possible again. Diesel, anytime I think a lot of people forget that those who are startups in the manufacturing sector are really, really having a hard time, because manufacturing is one thing the Nigerians have avoided for a long time. Production and manufacturing is quite difficult, and even for the big corporations and companies, manufacturing is very, very tedious. So if you think about it in a startup, from a startup perspective, a startup that is not even manufacturing focused, find it very difficult to grow in Nigeria, right? Then think of a startup that wants to be manufacturing goods locally with the high cost of energy and the high cost of diesel. It's going to be very, very difficult to maintain a good price for your products and be able to fight against inflation and still stay profitable. So I say tough climate, instability in forex, government policies, inflation affecting our price of our goods, affecting those who can afford it, making it no longer be the affordable or desirable option as it was prior to now. So I think those challenges, economic challenges, I believe every business is currently facing the same things that are bewildering us as of the moment. No house, no money to spend. One of the issues we've been trying to get legislative action to be taken against is the issue of the ban of charcoal, right? Some arms of the government are actually advocating for our products to be used, right? We have been working with agencies like Federal Industrial Research Institute, UNDP, and many other international government organizations to push for sustainable charcoal, and that's what we're producing. Yet, the Nigerian National Export Promotion Council has banned the export of charcoal, right? And half of the charcoal produced in Nigeria is exported. So the international community is one of the major drivers for charcoal production in Nigeria, right? So you're having some part of the government saying, let's start exporting sustainable charcoal made from agricultural waste. And we're having another part of the government that is saying ban all charcoal exports. So there's lack of signage that says okay, we're not producing charcoal, right? We're producing biochar. We're not cutting down trees to produce our products. In fact, our company is preserving those trees. In fact, the company started to ensure that we can kick wood charcoal out of the market and keep our trees standing, right? So there's lack of signage in the government. Banning the export of charcoal has tremendously affected our operations, right? If you just ban charcoal completely, so I'll say there's four classification and categorization of products. What we're producing is not with charcoal, so it shouldn't be branded as contraband. As a matter of fact, the government should be pushing the product by all means possible, right? To be ensuring that products like ours are given tax reliefs, um, tax holidays, are given a lot of waivers for export and tax, etc., rather than grouping it as what you are fighting against. So there's complete lack of synergy within the Nigerian government and improper categorization and classification of goods, right?
People are yearning.
I would say not really pushed it. It has not really been a lot of our primary focus. Where we have a lot of logistical things we're trying to do on one side, operating the business, growing the business. So that takes enough time, right? So we don't really have resources or enough time on our hands to start pushing the government. We are trying, although on whenever we meet them, individuals and the government, to lay our complaints for them to be able to understand that they are being counterproductive. They are unknowingly putting an obstacle in the way of what they're trying to stop, right? I would say anytime we meet individuals and the government, we try to work closely with government organizations. But with bureaucracy and institutional decay in the Nigerian government, it's very difficult to push these things to the legislative arms that can actually make the required changes that we need, right? But we'll keep pushing. We'll keep pushing. Hopefully, if the market forces, we'll be able to make the government pay attention to the complaints we're making and make the necessary moves, because this is a win-win. The government, some parts of the government actually want this, but another part of the government has stopped it. So it's an institutional communication problem and lack of synergy within the government agencies themselves.
Freedom and justice.
Well, that's a good point, right? As far as I'm concerned, charcoal is charcoal, but charcoal isn't just charcoal, right? Someone goes to the bush, cuts down a tree, spends a week, makes a huge pile, burns it for weeks, right? Puts it in sacks, takes it into the city, leaves the village, the bush he just went to in a very horrible state. Another person works with farmers, takes their agricultural waste, increase their earnings, process it using special machines in a very sustainable way, package it and tries to export it into our community to stop the degradation of the environment and land loss. Now, these are two different products. Yes, essentially it gives you the same thing, right? But as far as I'm concerned, well, it's still charcoal, right? It's flat. But obviously it doesn't look the same, right? One is simply a lump and one has a shape, either long, cylindrical, small, a pallet size, something like that, something that comes out of a machine. So, but as I said, it's an issue. As far as I'm concerned, as much as it looks differently, they could start telling, well, some, this may just be you guys trying to change the shape. You guys are still using the same raw materials, right? You guys are still cutting down trees. This is contraband. So it's lack of, or I say, institutional professionalism and a lot of institutional decay. The people who actually manage these things are simply custom or immigration guys who have zero experience, who do not care what's going on as far as they just inspect. No, this is categorized as charcoal. So there isn't actually a category for it that has been created, right? And it's not only our company that's facing these challenges. Other companies are paying the challenge. Companies are illegally paying a million, 2 million naira just to get their goods out of the country, right? So this is a problem. This is a problem where the government, if some arms of the government, Ministry of Environment, Federal Ministry of Technology and Science and Technology, is advocating for products like ours, right? Another agency of the government is preventing the sector from growing unknowingly. So we have to get these two places to connect, right? And let it be a smooth sailing, right? So as I said, it's institutional decay, lack of synergy, and just lack of professionalism overall. that is causing these obstacles.
Blaming the region authority for the war.
For me, what really pushes me, aside from the market opportunity, is we have a serious problem. As a matter of fact, Nigeria should be in a state of alarm and emergency. We have the highest rate of deforestation in the world, while we have some of the smallest forests even in Africa. Right? We barely have any forests, yet we cut down more trees than any other country in the world. So this is absolutely unacceptable. It's absolutely mind blowing. In 10 years from now, Nigeria will have no forest. As a matter of fact, in 10 years from now, Nigeria will have to start importing firewood and charcoal from other West African countries because of lack of control, lack of regulation and policy has led for unsustainable consumption of our forest resources and has depleted our forest resources beyond the natural regeneration and natural replenishment. So we have to cut down our consumption. Looking at how much forest and biodiversity and animals Nigeria has lost, really motivates me every single day to ensure that this company works and this company really grows to where we need to go. So at least we can capture 10% of Nigeria's charcoal and firewood market, so we can reduce the dependency on wood, charcoal, and firewood across industries, households, and small and medium scale enterprises.
Could suffering have been destined? No.
I'll look at individuals like the the royal head of the UAE, Al Maktoum, as a revolutionary who is a pioneer who looked at an arid desert and created a vision that he too can convert an arid desert to have lushy green gardens and so this is something that was almost unconceivable. How can a pagan Arab in the desert be able to convert a desert to have gardens, to have waterfalls, to completely become a first world country, right? So that type of vision and dedication to be able to look at in just a few years to look at something that no one is doing. Because a pioneer's journey is a very, very lonely one and it's a very, very tough one. To start something no one is doing and to believe that you'll be able to have like a paradigm shift, to change a whole sector, to revolutionize the way things are done completely, from nothing to something. Really, I look at his persistence and vision to stay committed despite the numerous challenges the Gulf had faced in the past 30 to 40 years.
Could it have been across the beer? Could suffering have been destined?
It is profitable, but our revenues are not really hitting where we want it to be because we're still doing a lot of growth. We're still buying machinery. We're still doing expansion slowly. Because we're a startup, we don't want to go through the loan axis. Investment has slowed in Africa. Venture capitalists are being a little bit more cautious with their money. We are seeing a lot of tech firms doing massive layoffs, etc. So there's a slowdown economically. And the top venture capitalist firms and investment companies like ours, which are VC firms that are into sustainability, energy, waste recycling, things like that, they're not really at loss and they're not really focusing on Africa as much as they're supposed to. So there's already a competition, or let's say it's already tough getting investment, then joined with the economic decline that we're having post pandemic and also currently due to the Ukraine Russian war and oil prices going up. It's been slowed down. But we're hoping within the next 18 months to be able to be hitting 700 to 800,000 US dollars revenue by the end of the year.
Could it have been across the beer?
Totally. For me, I don't really like to judge because as humans, we have always had, we have always migrated. We always migrate to greener climates. If we should just go back. Originally, the houses of the Hausa land were not in northern Nigeria. They were actually from eastern Africa, but due to drought, they migrated to West Africa, right? About 1,000 plus years ago. So humans have always migrated. The economic climate in Nigeria is quite tough. I understand. I might not fully support it, but I understand the pressure when others try to look for greener pastures internationally. That being said, there's a requirement for those in diaspora to come back into Africa. They have the experience, they have the money, they have the network. There are a lot of problems that have huge market opportunities that can be leveraged upon in Africa, in Nigeria. I think they have to start looking back home and they have to start looking inwards because they can actually be more successful coming back into Africa and building bold, big companies than staying in the US or in Europe or in Asia trying to make ends meet.
With lack and abundance, living side by side, we can exchange.
I'll say try to be passionate about it. If you're only spoiled by the money, it's going to be very disappointing and you're going to give up very, very fast. Because the obstacles and challenges building a startup in Nigeria, if you do not come from an affluent home or have a big name, have a big son name or something, it's very, very difficult to actually build a big company from scratch and not run into loans and debts, etc. I think you have to be very, very passionate about it. Find a problem you are passionate about solving that that really pains you in the heart, and trying to find a way that it can be profitable and build a business around it, and be very realistic about the economy and the market in Nigeria. Nigerians have a very dynamic market, have a very dynamic buying population. So why we buy in Nigeria, our spending habits is very peculiar and dynamic in Nigeria. So I think startups should not be oblivious to the reality of Nigerians, what they want. I think startups and individuals should look at problems that people are willing to pay for and solve those problems, or look at services that people are paying for and look at how they can improve those services, right? So that people can get better services. Because when people get better services, they're willing to pay more for those services or leave where they're currently getting those services, right? Wherever I look at problems in Nigeria, I look at opportunities. There's so many opportunities for you to be able to get money from. Right?
Your pains for joy. If
I
only we
think one area that we don't really talk about is the investment landscape in Nigeria. A lot of startups are completely unaware of how to get investment. Completely, people start and have zero idea. Right? A lot of things when you go online is for people who are in the US. Right? You browse something and they're telling you, giving you guidelines of how to get investment. But you're in Nigeria, right? How really do you get it? So I think we really need to start talking about how can we publicize and democratize investment access. How can we ensure that the early stage startup in Owerri or in Kaduna State can have access to angel investors, venture capitalist funds, and other forms of funders, right? How can they know about them? How can we create more funders and VC firms, right? And also, how can we have efficient knowledge transfer? A lot of Nigerian startups do not actually know how a startup is supposed to operate. There's a lot of lack of knowledge transfer, and a lot of people don't really have some of the most fundamental knowledge and information they should have if they should at all be able to build a successful startup. Also, lastly, we were not really talking about the reality of how to build a startup in Nigeria. How to build a startup in Nigeria that is both successful. You have to create a simple model. Your business model has to be very, very simple, not complicated. You have to have a proper product market fit, where there's a specific product that you're building for a specific market that are willing and ready to pay. And also talking about how investors can exit from your company, right? A lot of times in Africa, it's not realistic for IPO. The typical timeline for a startup is to do your pre-seed, Series A, Series B, Series C, then maybe go IPO. Only one company has been able to IPO in Africa, and that's Jumia, right? That was able to get listed in the New York Stock Exchange. But that is not the pathway that a lot of startups will go to, right? They're more likely going to get investors who are going to exit, or other investors who buy their shares, or investors who will be exiting in 10 years, or investors who will come in for profit sharing and not necessarily just equity. So I think we have to really talk about how how do how the startups build investment friendly startups, and how the startups know about how to get investment, and how do we share knowledge across the country about the realities of business and the realities of startup, how to ensure they're successful from ideation all the way to scaling and fundraising.
We know, yeah.
um, I'm not really sure I do. All I can say is um, we have to we have what it takes. We must ensure that we stay we have what it takes as Nigerians. We're extremely gifted. We undersell ourselves and we undermine how much capacity we have as private sector participators, and how we can completely change the trajectory of this country. I think we should keep on the fire. We should support one another, and we'll be surprised what the private sector can do for us.
What a life, what a world, what a country, what about me? Every time, every day, every night, people talking about injustice.